as kind of time went on, we really sort of saw the, I guess you could say, the value, right, and the joy of it, of being able to have multiple loving relationships and being able to, I guess, in a way, both have us as primary partners, but also have other partners where we could explore different areas of our lives and love in different ways. And that's kind of the coolest thing that's come out of all this, is that we realize that we can love people differently and have a different kind of love with other people, and it all be okay, and it all be welcome and accepted. And that kind of lets us grow in different ways too, right? That lets us to continue to grow too.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Well, welcome to episode 318. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an interview with Sarah and George, part 2.
Part 2.
However,
if you went looking for Sarah and George in the history of our podcast, you did not find them.
Nope. They came on episode 169 back in February 2021 as Alice and Sam. So we'll talk about in the beginning of the interview why this name change. So stay tuned for that. But we wanted to let you know this up front so you could go back and listen if you want to. It's encouraged, but not required. Like, listen to this one, listen to them in any order, whatever you want.
Yeah, this conversation is really amazing. They do take what sort of their dynamic was when we talked to them back in 2021, and they talk about the changes that they've made. But it is really beautiful to hear the intentionality that these two have, how much work they do on themselves, on their relationship. And I think the part for me that kind of stuck out, I wrote a note here just about like the difference between like talking a big game and living a big game. Yeah. And that's not that they go and do wild and crazy things, which they do some of that, but a lot of it is relationally making really hard decisions and saying, this isn't going to be easy, but we believe it's the best thing for us and our partnership. And so, we're going to give it a try, even if it's not 100%, we feel confident in our foundation to build a life together on top of. And so I love that. And I think that's a really powerful theme.
Yes, I agree. And the other piece that is really, well, so much of this conversation is powerful, but the other piece I wanted to mention was they talk a lot about the power and role of Burning Man and what that role is in their lives and the power of community. I love that part of the conversation too.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so the good news is, Sarah and George are actually pretty active on Instagram, and they love to invite and build community around their Instagram and their lives. And this is a thread that they talked about a lot more on the first episode, but hasn't really changed at this point. And so we wanted to just make everybody aware. Links to their Instagram account are in the podcast show notes. And the other link in there that they mentioned, they kind of throw it out really quick. You hear them mention the name Fight Boring Marriages. And Fight Boring Marriages is another Instagram account, and actually people we had on the show way back on episode 39, which, by the way, they're due for an oil change. So we'll bring them back in. But that is who they're talking about. Links to their Instagram is in the show notes as well. So we just wanted to clarify that for anybody who was confused at what that was.
And with that, for anyone who's a premium subscriber, we're going to jump right into the interview with Sarah and George now. And for anyone else, we will go through a couple of announcements.
First announcement is, if you don't want to hear these announcements, you can sign up for the premium subscription. It's a couple of bucks a month. You can find more information on our homepage at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Scroll down towards the bottom. You'll see right there how to join. And that lets you skip all of our announcements up front. But do not worry. We will still tell you all of the important dates for stuff like virtual meet and greets, in-person events, and on in the outro.
Yes. Next up, we had a really amazing, super fun virtual meet and greet this past weekend. And we have another one coming up in January. So we're telling you about it now. Mark your calendars for January 26th. and come and join us for our next virtual meet and greet.
Yeah, we will see you there. And just a huge thank you to everybody who joined us over the weekend for the one on Saturday night. We had a great time.
We did.
Yeah. Next up is our virtual community. Maybe you don't want to wait until January 26th to meet some new amazing people. Well, good news. There is a whole bunch of us, almost 300 of us, who hang out in an online community all day, every day, supporting one another. We do virtual Q&A calls once a month. We also have a men's group. We have a women's group. And we are constantly working to improve the support and community there. So we would love to have you join us. For more information on how to do that, you can head over to our website, again, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab, and you'll see information there.
We also are doing an in-person community retreat in January, coming up just next month, January 12th through the 14th in Atlanta, Georgia. This will be for community members only, but you can still join in the next few weeks. Join the community, come join us in Atlanta, and get on the RSVP list.
Yeah, we would love to have you. It's going to be a great time. We've just got a few days of great community building activities, nothing super crazy. And it's just going to be a good time.
It's going to be chill and fun.
Chill and fun.
Yes. Last but not least, also while you're on our website, go over to the resources tab, check out our favorite way to get tested for STIs. That is stdcheck.com. By using the links on our website, you support the podcast. Thank you very much in advance. And you also receive a discount, making a 10-panel test only $129.
Yeah, I think this, if ever there is a great gift for your polycule, your friends with benefits, or your just benefits.
An STI test.
Yeah, I'd say get them out. I hand them out all year, but primarily around the holidays.
Yes. And with that.
They fit right in your stocking. They're a great stocking stuffer.
It's for all the family?
For all the family, yeah, why not? Here you go, Mom and Dad. Grandma, Grandpa, no problem.
Anyway, also a quick reminder, reach out to us, send us a voicemail, send us an email. We would love to hear from you if you'd like to come on the podcast, or if you have any questions for us, send us an email.
We would love to hear from you.
And with that, we will go and talk to Sarah and George. Well, welcome back to the podcast, Sam and Alice. It's really wonderful to see you again. I know we last talked about 2.5 years ago. So it's awesome to see you both, and I'm excited to dive in. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you two mind starting us off? Well, introductions again about who you are so we can catch people up a little bit, but also we are doing a name change today. So maybe we should talk about that briefly before we move forward so everybody's on the same page.
Yeah. So last time we did the episode, we used not our real names. We used Sam and Alice, but our real names are George and Sarah. So we're going to be using George and Sarah through the rest of the podcast.
Perfect.
And we just felt like we're at a point where we don't need to be as anonymous. So we're pretty comfortable where we're at. We've gone through a lot in the last 2.5 years. So that's kind of why we want to come back and share a little more about how things have gone.
Awesome. Well, we will do our best to switch. We train ourselves really well to stay with the pseudonym. So now people just have to be ready for any of it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Any of the names.
Well, then welcome back to the show, George and Sarah. We're excited to have you. Mm-hmm. Do you mind, introducing yourselves, and then maybe a quick high level that takes us to roughly March of 2021 when we last talked?
Sure. I'm Sarah. I have been non-monogamous since 2013, I would say. Met George in late of 2016. Started dating early 2017. Introduced him to this world we are now living in. We've been living together for almost 7 years. So coming on up. Mm-hmm. And still just continuing on this journey, and it just has continued to solidify that it's been the right choice for us in being this way.
Yeah. It was my first entry into non-monogamy when I first started dating Sarah. And the first date actually we went on, she made it really clear that if we were to continue dating, it would be a non-monogamous relationship. And that was completely brand new for me. So my trajectory to going from serial relationships, serial monogamy into this different world was terrifying, exciting, but something I kind of really relished as far as the challenge is concerned. And we went through a lot. And I think on the previous podcast, we kind of described our trajectory and a lot of things we went through very quickly and learned. And since then, we've evolved. It's not been as much of a rocket ship, out to outer space trajectory, but it's been really, really healthy stuff that we've gone through. Not always perfect, but I think we've learned a lot. And part of the reason we wanted to come back and share more of our story is that we've gotten involved in different things and evolved our relationship. Burning Man has become a big part of our lives too. So we wanted to share a little bit about that and why it's a great fit for our types of people we like to be around and kind of things we like to do. So we wanted to share some of that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love it. And I think too, that sort of trajectory, right, where you first jump into this. And I think this is true with most things that we're learning, right? If you don't know anything, to get to like a base level of functionality, it's like super steep. It's probably super clunky, lots of mistakes. And then you almost kind of level off and you're like, okay, we still don't know what the hell we're doing, but like we at least got a lot of the bumps and bruises out of the way. And now we're like fine tuning it. Is that sort of the last 2 years have been that fine tuning?
It is.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I go to events in the community and I talk to other people, they consider us more sometimes veterans. And I don't necessarily consider myself a veteran because I feel like there's always still things to learn and all of that. So that's a little bit hard to grasp that, like, oh, I've been in this long enough that I guess I'm considered experienced at this point, even though I don't always feel like it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that's changed since the other episode we did was we're both like firmly poly now. I think before we were trying to figure it out of dating or finding somebody else, and everything was still pretty new to us. And I think even our mindset around that time was like, we weren't even sure if poly was the right thing for us. We didn't fully like immerse ourselves into it either. We would date. We would go, I think, more together to events and stuff like that, figure that out, go to sex clubs or socials and whatnot, but as a couple. And then, as kind of time went on, we really sort of saw the, I guess you could say the value, right? And the joy of it, of being able to have multiple loving relationships and being able to, I guess in a way, both have us as primary partners, but also have other partners where we could explore different areas of our lives and love in different ways. And that's kind of the coolest thing that's come out of all this, is that we realize that we can love people differently, have a different kind of love with other people, and it all be okay, and it all be welcome and accepted. And that kind of lets us grow in different ways too, right? That lets us to continue to grow too. So that's kind of what's happened. And we can, I can just go dive into a few stories and things that we've gone through in that.
Yeah, we've worked more on our autonomy of just me being able to choose what I feel is right for me at whatever point I'm at in my life. And George is able to choose what he feels is right for him. And we don't need to consult on that. I mean, of course, we communicate about what is going on, but I don't need to just be like, oh, hey, I feel like this is what I want to do. If it's something I feel like I want to do, then I just take the confidence in myself to pursue that.
Yeah, it's something we actually consciously worked on starting about a little over a year ago, where I was more, I guess you could say more poly than Sarah was at that point, in a sense that I had somebody else that I was seeing on occasion, and still see a very close and dear friend. And but it's more about schedules and timing and priorities in life, right? How we can see other people. So,
oh yeah.
But I think the kind of the important note that came out of our conscious effort to become more autonomous was that there were certain things that I had to work on to feel that way, to feel like I could date, freely, and same thing with Sarah. And so, for me, it was always about relationships. It was always about feeling very comfortable with somebody, a much slower process, and feeling emotionally connected to somebody before I could date and even get involved sexually. And I actually made an effort to jump on dating sites, go on dates, have more casual sex. And I don't know if it was successful or not. I don't know if I would measure that, but it did give me a little more confidence. But what I think it really did, though, was that it kind of prepared us to have different independent lives, I guess, around when it came to dating. Like she could jump on an app anytime she wanted to and find somebody. She's like, hey, I found somebody, I'm going to go on a date. And it didn't have to be this back and forth process, of figuring out, is it the right thing for her? Is it, how do I feel about that? Setting boundaries. In a lot of ways, actually, we don't have a ton of boundaries anymore. We've given each other the space to choose. And so I think that's what we sort of realized needed to happen for us to feel more autonomous. Is it wasn't so much just saying, yeah, you can go date. It was actually having physically more space and not being around each other so much. So that led right into what happened at the beginning of 2023 this year. I took a job overseas. I've worked overseas before in the Middle East, and so I took another job, and that was gonna take me pretty much this entire year. I was going to be in the Middle East, so we kind of set ourselves up for that. And something very interesting kind of happened.
I had a lot of fun the first few months.
Yeah, like, oh wow, okay.
He's like, that's kind of easy for her.
I know Sarah really took to this autonomy thing. Wow, she's kind of busy. And me, I'm just working. And but I think it was really healthy, though. It wasn't necessarily easy, but it was healthy. And I think that's kind of the important thing too for people who are starting to figure things out in this world, right? That uncomfortableness, a little bit of stress, a little bit of concern. Isn't necessarily bad, right? It's healthy to work through those things, and we always had good we've always had good communication, and our foundation for communication has always been that we have a place to always come back to if we're struggling, like if we're either it's an argument or we've had a disagreement or we've gone through a rough patch of something. We always have a place that we can come back to, just her and I, and it's our safe space, if you will. And it's in bed, but we make sure we face each other, and it's always been a place that we can talk and be sincere and be honest and have tears and whatnot and work through our things. And by having that, that's our bedrock, and we feel like we can work through anything. It's scary and it sucks. There's definitely days where things don't go well and we go through a rough patch.
Yeah. But I still tell people that the non-monogamy part is still easier than the kids and finances.
Yeah.
Those are still the harder conversations than
yeah, right. I know.
than the non-monogamy.
Yeah.
Or the bigger stressors.
I know, because we really did start out our relationship with a foundation of having good communication, from the start, and really being honest and digging into a lot of our insecurities and fears and talking about them. I made it, and I think I shared this on the earlier podcast, but I had a lot of, and still have a lot of insecurities, but she was the first person ever that I really sort of dug into them and really investigated them and put them on paper. Literally, I wrote emails about them, what are they, and shared them. It was the first time I'd ever shared anything like that. And it was scary. It was tremendously scary, but I knew I had to do it. I knew that in order for our relationship to work, I had to do that. And, she gave me the confidence to do that, though. She was the first person I ever felt like emotionally safe with. And I think that having that foundation from the start of a relationship is why I think we've flourished so well, in this space. And I think it shows too. We've made so many amazing friends along our journey in this, I guess, relatively short period of time, right? 7 years now, but
it's still meeting people.
Yeah. And we're still open to meeting people. And that kind of leads into what kind of other things we do today, right? We're kind of, now that I don't know if we're experts or not, but we kind of willingly people under our wing, and
who might be a little newer in their journey or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's never any pressure or anything, but it's just, we just like to be open with them and say, hey, if you really have questions about stuff or you want to just have somebody just to hang out with, just to talk about things and talk about how things are going, like we're here too. It's, I wouldn't call it therapy, but it's just, it's just a safe space for them to operate too.
Well, I think it's super powerful because there's so much in this world that I think when we first get into it, you think, well, if somebody's talking to me, it's because they have an angle. right? Somebody's got to be angling for something.
Right.
And to be able to land there and say, hey, no, you could come over. Literally all we're going to do is sit outside by the fire and have dinner and talk, right? There's no pressure. And this is what it can be. This is what being able to be yourself looks like, and being able to hold that container and
friendship. It's friendship. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we really value that, the relationships we have, the friends that we have, I should say. I say relationships, but, because we've been doing this a little while, like our idea of friendships aren't just in this traditional box of friendships, right? It's open to any degree of depth.
I mean, there's sometimes more things happen, and most often they don't. But, I mean, if it happens, it happens.
Right.
But it's not taboo if it did, or the conversation came up, or somebody could say, hey, I'm interested in this. And somebody else can say, that's amazing, but maybe not today, or I'm not that interested in, but the communication and the ability to talk about it is there.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's an emotionally safe place, right? Socially, right? And that's a huge difference, right? Because I think anybody who's gone through this evolution, I guess you could say, that they went from traditional relationships and friendships and whatnot and conversations, and then they come into the realm of non-monogamy or anything else on the full spectrum of whether it's kink or whether it's anything non-traditional. You really realize the value of having a safe space, right? And people who you can talk with about anything, right? Because it lets you explore things too, and talk about the kind of challenges and joys that we find through this too.
Or even going to events, or we vacation with groups of our friends a couple of times now, where we'll end up at like a kink event with a group of us. And, and so it's just being able to have people to go and do those things with when there's no expectation of anything happening, but other than to be somewhere together and hang out.
Yeah. Like we, COVID, I think, trying to think of the exact timing. We went on a trip. It's a little story, right? We went on a vacation,
right
at the end of COVID, which was, let's call it May of 2022.
I don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, right when the world opened back up.
Yeah, right when the world opened back up. So it was funny because our friends fight boring marriages. We referenced them. We at some point during COVID were like, man, do you guys want to go on a vacation once COVID's over? Because everybody's cooped up, everybody's in their house, and yeah, where should we go? I'm like, how about Greece? And they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's go to Greece. And it's like, well, when should we go? And at that time, when we started talking, it was September of 2021, I guess.
2020.
2020? Oh yeah, 2020. The news started to come out that vaccines were being developed, right? And so there was some hope that there's going to be vaccines going to be rolled out through winter and spring. So we planned a trip, and we planned it for May of 2020.
Must have been ruined.
Yeah. And 2021, correct, yeah. And so we planned it at the end of May. We thought, okay, by that time, either the world's going to end or we're going to be able to travel freely. So
little did you know.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, it wasn't quite that. It was kind of neither. It was kind of right in the middle. couldn't figure it out. Yeah, but anyway, so we planned this trip 8 months in advance, and we started contacting some of our friends, and we ended up getting 6 different couples actually to go on this trip, and everybody was on the spectrum of non-monogamous, somewhere in there. From people who were heavily much more into swinging, and other people who were poly. Other people were just kind of just dipping their toes in. But it was all people who we're close with though too as well, right? And amazingly enough, it's an interesting thing to travel with other people, right? Travel with friends. It's one of the toughest tricks. And coming out of COVID, we had no idea how this was all going to go, right? And as May started to get closer and closer, everything was still closed. And so we had no idea what was going to happen. And then literally 2 weeks before we left to get on our flight, they opened up Greece. Greece said, okay, Greece is back open to tourism. So we ended up in Athens and then Santorini and Mykonos. And
we got great deals.
We got great deals. There was nobody there. It was like the most amazing thing that happened out of that. But truly, like, I mean, that was kind of the backdrop. But what was really, really cool about the whole thing was just the attitude of everybody. You know, everybody had just a great positive attitude. And part of it was probably just because we're coming out of COVID, but also like the quality of the people that we were with. And that's kind of the moral of the story, is that through this, we've met incredible people, like just wonderful, genuine, honest, fun people. And this vacation was simply just like amazing in that I think just being in a household of other people, other adults who care for each other, who are considerate, who are honest, it just makes a very, very different environment for vacationing.
Yeah, and I think one of the funnest moments of that, and the funniest also, is we did one of those catamaran cruises. And since there were 12 of us, we got the whole thing to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And so we asked the crew, we're like, can we do anything we want? And they're like, yeah, you can do anything you want. I'm like, are you sure? Before you tell this group of people, we can do anything. You really mean anything.
Yep.
So it's like, it turned into a naked cruise.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we were just like,
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm not sure that they were quite ready for all of that, but
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, what else can you want when you're in
Well, we did ask
Santorini and
we asked what was she? She's the captain, I guess so.
yeah.
And she said, yeah, sure. We're Greek, whatever. We don't care. You know? So,
One girl's like, it's my first day.
oh, I know. It's like, well, okay. Well, every single catamaran cruise is going to be just like this.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's all easy from here. Yeah.
I know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah. So skinny dipping in the Aegean Sea was something else. Highly recommended. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
I love it. I love it. And I think so much of your journey, the last time we talked too, is just around community and building community. And it's small groups. Sometimes they're bigger groups. Sometimes it's just the two of you and another couple or another person. But it's so much just about like the genuine connection. And I think, George, you kind of touched on that a few times around the safety and the security to explore who you are. And it sounds like you went through a little bit of that self-actualization, self-realization earlier. It sounded like earlier this year, where like getting on apps and trying to hook up with people, that maybe isn't your vibe, but you almost had to live it to know it, right? To say like, okay, I went and tried it. I even made it happen a few times, but like, it's not me. It's not what I want versus, yeah, I can do it. And it's maybe fills her cup up a little more, but now you're both looking at a thing that sits under the umbrella of non-monogamy. And you're saying, but my flavor looks like this and your flavor looks like this. Can our two flavors, can we swirl them together in a cone? I guess is the trick.
That's a great observation. I like the way you put that, because it's
I love it.
kind of, yeah, nice job. Excellent. Yeah.
I should do this for a living.
Yeah, use your more terms, right? I know. If you ever need like a word for something or a phrase for something, we'll hit you up.
That's right. Yeah, it's the bane of Emma's existence some days, but I can create them.
He's like,
no comment.
That's great. But that's a great point, because it's kind of it is what we realized after coming out of that. And I think the fact that I was physically not home for months, right, really helped.
This year, yeah.
Yeah, earlier this year, yes, yeah. 2023. I was halfway around the world, right? And so we weren't even on the same time schedules. It was very difficult to even connect, right? Because we were 12 hours difference.
Yeah, I think the most challenging piece of it was aftercare, because aftercare was going to look different when we were in 12-hour different time zones. And our aftercare usually is in person. So we had to navigate different ways to do aftercare. We've since learned, I mean, we need a little less aftercare most of the time than we used to need earlier on. So it's just, I think that's been one of the bigger changes too.
And just for people who might not be familiar, when you say aftercare, you mean like after one of you has an experience with somebody else, like how you two come back together and talk about that.
Yeah. And how we reconnect with each other.
Yeah. But it's a great point though, just to, it's become essential for us, right? To make sure we do that, even though we don't, I take that back. It's essential to talk about it beforehand, right? And understand that that it's there and available for us to do, because the reconnection is the big part, especially as we, I guess, guide new people. We stress it highly to at least talk about it and understand what we need after the fact. And it's not just for the person who went through the experience with somebody else; it's for the other person too who didn't, right? And to make sure that they feel connected afterwards.
Yeah. And there's times where we'll have a discussion before and we're not feeling like we need the same level as we might on a different occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So it varies a lot more, where in the beginning it was more consistent than it was 100% always a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But it sounds like even as you've arrived at a little more security around it, you still don't take it for granted and say, you still check in before the experience and say, what do we need after this experience? Even if the answer is like, I don't need anything, just the touch point helps create that feeling that like it mattered enough to talk about it.
Just not to assume that just because we have more autonomy that the aftercare no longer needs to exist.
yeah.
Right.
No,
Or that you're in a vacuum somehow. Yeah.
Right. And to that, I know that, well, let's say that, as Sarah was going on a lot more dates, I was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't think it was going to happen that fast. And at the time, she was also seeing her therapist too. And part of it, I think, I don't think it's the truth, but the therapist said, it looks like you're doing pretty good there, Sarah. I don't know if you need to come in as much for what's going on. It might be actually harder for George to adjust, right, into the fact that she's going on a lot more dates and she's having a lot more called success, right? But she was really enjoying herself, and her confidence was really building up from that experience. And I think that was super important for her. For me, however, I struggled a bit to do that because it was so rapid, because for me, dating apps is terrible. Like meeting a lot of new people through apps, it just doesn't happen for me as much, for whatever reason,
Where I have fun with it.
Yeah. And well, there's differences between males and females and physical appearance, everything. It all matters, even though we like to think it shouldn't matter, if it does. So you're right. My mode and comfort is much more in person, meeting people, than through apps. So part of that, and the reason why I'm not in the Middle East anymore, was that about, end of April, May or so, there was a lot of things going on emotionally for me, like personally for me. But that was one of the pieces of the pie, was realizing that I was really kind of missing her. And then I was getting a little insecure about the whole thing too, right? Like, oh, well, on the dating site, she doesn't really need me. She's doing fine, and it was, 2, 3, 4 different guys at a time, not at a time.
She's like, although.
It sounds like I'm holding gangbangs.
I know. Yeah. No. Different dates. So her calendar was full, and when I wasn't there. And actually her calendar is a lot more full when I'm not home, which is fun, but not always funny. But that was adjustment for me. And part of it was I actually wanted to come home. I wanted to make sure we reconnected, because we had mentioned aftercare. It was kind of like the big, collection of aftercare that I needed to reconnect. And even a few times, she would come out and visit. Like she came out to the Middle East on a long weekend with some friends, and honestly, I didn't feel like we fully reconnected when she came out. It wasn't like that same sort of deep reconnection, and so that worried me a little bit that we didn't have it at that time. So, and frankly, I reprioritized things. I ended up quitting my job, and it was a great situation too. I was actually able to live in Spain and work from Spain on a remote tech job, right? Yeah, exactly. I see your face. Can't see the faces on the podcast, but yeah, I know. I was living in Barcelona now.
So there's a job opening, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And, and everything was fine on the surface of things, but emotionally, I was like, my best life is back with Sarah, and the fact that I was foregoing it for money for a job, and do I really need to work for that? It's like, oh, I didn't. So, it's really actually gratifying to know that I can prioritize my life for that, and that it's so much more important than, jobs are obviously we need make a living, we need to survive, but when we have the moments to make those decisions, and because I could, it was a big deal for me, to walk away from that job. I literally fired my employer. I laid them off. I mean, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nothing against my employer. It had nothing to do with it, but I think it's the same thing where, if we really dig down deep and have these kind of depth of relationships and connections, prioritization becomes easier to do things that don't seem as like most people would do. There's a lot of surprise that I just walked away from a job like that, just to have I think back into a better life that I wanted. So,
yeah, that's amazing.
Do you feel like it's better since you've been back?
Of course, of course, it's better. Yeah.
I'd love to unpack that a little more, but I'm curious, Sarah, your experience going through all of this, because I mean, right, the therapist's like, "Hey, Sarah, you're cruising, no big deal." But I'm curious, like, what was actually going on for Sarah during this time?
I mean, it is different when he's gone, and I think just because I'm taking care of more things on my own, the kids are with us full time, and so I don't have to worry about, I have a lot of different directions in where my time and energy has to go. And so sometimes it's easier when he's not around to try to, it's like to in the priorities. And so I have more things going on in more baskets. And we always have anytime he's gone or any length of time, well, other than a couple of days, it's like the readjustment period. It's always a little challenging. It's always like a week or two of readjusting to having him back in the house.
Or longer. I don't know. This last time it took a little longer when I came back. Yeah.
So it's like, it's always just kind of like that readjustment period of, getting our lives back into the homeostasis of being back together again. Mm-hmm. Seems to be the most challenging part of it. Mm-hmm. So I seem to do well either when he's here or he's gone. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the most challenging part are those transition times.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've thought an observation that what I noticed, and I think the easy conclusion is that when you actually give somebody, like, we'll call it physical space, but the fact that I wasn't here and full time and knowing that I was somewhere else lets her not worry about how things might go when she comes home, right, after a date, right? And by having that freedom, it's back to like the single dating life mentality, right? Like, and because of that, you just feel a lot freer to, I'm not on your mind, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's one less person in the house to navigate, emotionally in time.
Yeah, and you're not going to talk about the dates with your kids, right? Right. So, so it's your personal experience. It's much more personal for you to, I guess you could say, like, have your dates and not worry about me. And so that makes me think that the more I can create that room for her, whether I'm physically around her or not, the better, because she's just going to enjoy it more. She's just going to feel less worried about, what might happen or how I might react, or if we're going to have a little conflict or making me feel bad or whatever it is, right? We all naturally, I think, feel that way to an extent. And we worry about that. And the less you can worry about it, the more I think fun she's going to have with it. You can enjoy it. So.
And we try to just not even ask permission, the whole shared calendar thing. We'll just put on the calendar, date with so-and-so. And it pops up on his schedule and be like, oh, she's got a date that night. Or he'll put his date on there and be like, oh, he's got a date that day. So we try to even handle it at that, where it's not checking in like, oh, is it okay if I do this? It's like, we just schedule it and work around the shared calendar. Right. Every poly person's favorite thing.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of thoughts or curiosities in there. One is, or maybe an observation, is that when Sarah comes home and let's say you're overseas, George, that I hear that, like, that's one less thing she has to worry about. But I also feel, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you still have to quote unquote deal with it, right? But you're not maybe dealing with it in the moment, in person, 5 minutes after the date. He's going to be, or maybe he's waking up, right? You come home at midnight, he's in the middle of his work day or something like that. And like, okay, I'm going to go to sleep, I'm going to wake up, and we're going to talk about this at a different time. it's not that it just doesn't happen or it's just not a worry, but it's a different level that it wasn't, oh, you came home 7 minutes later than you said you would. And that throws a little bit of the vibe off. That it's not a big deal, but everyone's on a little like there is just a difference whether you're there or not.
Yeah. It was more of like a text, and then we would talk later. But we're also really good about when we are on dates with other people of being very present in those dates. Like our phones will be off. We don't check in with each other. So, because, your time is limited when you have other partners. And so you might only spend 3 or 4 hours a week, maybe with someone else. So I know we are very intentional about in that time with other people of being 100% present and, letting each other have that time in that space and to like not interrupt and know that, that we're going to see each other when it's over and we live together. So we've got so much more time together.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is sort of the second part of the question for me is how, let's say you kind of said you're not checking in like, hey, does Thursday work for you if I go out? Was there anything? You kind of look at the calendar. How do you two, through that methodology, make sure you are making enough time for the two of you and you're keeping the time that you two need for you? Do you revisit it? Do you block it off? Like, what does that look like?
That was going to be my question too.
I think it varies. Lately we have just enough stuff going on, like travel or get-togethers or things going on that we are spending enough time together. But if it ever does get too chaotic, then we will even schedule our own date and put it on the calendar. So things get revisited depending on where things are in life at the moment. We'll either make sure to schedule a date or, like I said, we've got enough going on that we're just spending time doing a lot of things lately.
Yeah. I mean, I like a social calendar, but as far as just one-on-one, me and Sarah, at one point we put on like a recurring thing, right? Like,
and it never happened.
It never happened. Like we stuck a time and like every Sunday, I don't know, we'd go out, like have date night, right? Every Sunday thing.
Never happened.
Never happened. I don't know. Why did it happen? I don't know.
Because somebody else that you were seeing at the time, that was the time that they were available and you were spending time.
Okay. Oh, whoops.
So it's not a foolproof system. It's got some nuances to it.
The intention is there. That's what this is all about, right? Going with intentions never works out. But
well, I mean, I love that you say that though, because that's the reality, right? You're veterans. You proclaimed that early on, I know in jest, but you're veterans, right, of doing this. It's still not perfect. We still have things that don't go according to plan.
No, I think that's it. That's absolutely the truth. You go in with intention. You go in with the right heart behind things, and that's such a better way about it, right? Just knowing that we're on the same page going into things, and we don't know exactly how they're going to turn out, right? We've both gone through different partners. Like things have been busy, and then all of a sudden not so busy as things end, come and go. But it doesn't affect our relationship per se, other than just a lot of reaffirmation that we're still having a lot of fun. It's the coolest thing about this of where we're at, especially with autonomy, is that we're both in a committed relationship to each other, but yet we're also single, right? You get to both be in a committed relationship and be single at the exact same time. How cool is that? Right? You can pick and choose. So,
and it's only been about the last year and a half that I've been more solo dating with intention of trying to find connected relationships. And so that's been newer for me since we last met, where I was just more of like casual, situational things might happen. So I've been putting more intent in trying to find people to date or connect with people. And it's always a little scary because it's like you go on a couple of dates and you don't want to like get too excited or too hopeful. And so, still some of the navigating that when going out with someone new, because it's like you go out a couple of times and think you're really connected and then it ends and you're like, thought that was going so well. And then you're like,
sounds like traditional dating.
Yeah. I mean, it really is in the same way. I just am lucky enough that I have someone that I still come home to. And I tell people, and even when I'm dating, I'm like, I don't have to like everything about you. I'm like, we're not ever going to live together. So it's like, if you have habits that bother me, they don't need to bother me. Like in somebody that I was looking for in like a life partner or even in monogamy, I think you're looking for all of these boxes to be checked. And when you're dating in poly, like I don't need all of those boxes to be checked. Like you don't need to check that box, and that's not something that I think that I would like in my life. That's fine. I don't need to like that because you're not like I say, we're not going to live together.
Yeah. Well, it also, I think in some ways, and correct me if I'm wrong for the two of you, but it also lets you stop having to check all of those boxes for each other. Even if you are living together, maybe you have to check different ones or maybe some more of them, but it does release you don't have to do 100% of the boxes on my list, because I can go get, maybe this other person does something that's really annoying and bothers the hell out of you, but you're like, but I get a different box checked there and I can ignore all of the boxes that aren't checked because that's just what it is for me. And they are good with it. I'm good with it. Everybody's good with it. Party on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sarah has a favorite expression. Like she likes to outsource things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like if there are sexual tasks that I find a little more laboring, I am more than happy to outsource.
Yeah.
It's like, fine with me. Okay, cool.
You like to do that?
Well,
go for it, girl. Go for it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think what I love about this, and we've talked a lot about it in the sense of relationships, but autonomy showed up in a big way for you two in the last bit outside of that. And that is, I mean, George going to work overseas for a couple of months, potentially for a whole year, that is a level of autonomy, support, and work that a relationship has to do to be able to make that happen. And so I know that it's easy to tilt the scale and say, well, George supports Sarah going on all these dates, 5 guys at the same time, same night. I know that wasn't exactly how it was, but right, you're supporting all of these things. But also, George, you have the support to go and work overseas and live in Spain and have those experiences and do that. And the two of you had to craft a way that you could do that. And you went and did that experience, and you did it for a couple months, and you're like, yeah, tried it, cashing in my chips, coming home, because that's not for me. And you've created a space where you have the autonomy to go and try it and the autonomy to come back home. She has the autonomy to go out, come home, and you just can have this home base where you just go out and do life, but you're also doing it together.
Yeah. That's the key that we realized when we started the relationship, that we built it from scratch, right? We built it from these building blocks of being open and honest about these things, and that we were going to struggle together too and grow together. And I think that's what's been really exciting about our relationship, is that we still continue to grow, right? And we still find ways to grow, different ways to grow, and things are going to evolve over time too. There's going to be, we have plans like once the kids are old enough, we're going to maybe live in different places too, live overseas. And who knows, but I think we're prepared to sort of choose what we want to do, and however that turns out. And that's the part that gives us a lot of comfort with each other, is that because we started our relationship growing together, we have a strong base for getting through things now. So
yeah, I'm going to need a remote job. So if anybody out there, I'm available.
I'm also curious, if you're open to talking about a little bit how you navigate it with kids. Imagine a lot of people have that question of, how do you do this?
It's, I've only had one person over our entire relationship, because I've only had the house to myself that one opportunity. So it's a little more challenging sometimes not being able to ever have people at the house. Kids are now 21 and 16. We've discussed, and we're at a point where if things come up in conversation or an opportunity presents itself, that we will have that conversation with them and come out to them, just because they're getting older, and I think sometimes things get a little more suspect. Like, where are you going when you go out all the time? Especially like when he's not around, like he's gone and mom's out 3 nights a week.
Very
I
sus.
think there's a little suspicion going on. So working on, we might be navigating that a little bit differently going forward shortly.
Yeah. We don't have a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. We don't have a plan. Yeah.
We don't have a plan, but we're a liberal home, and there's discussions about all things alternative in the house and with the kids. So I don't think it would be too shocking to them to find out. So,
yeah. And it's not that we're overly concealing anything. We're just sort of discreet about stuff. That's all,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as far as even like friends and coworkers and some family, they all know. So
yeah. So, I mean, I guess I go back to my statement, like, we don't have a plan.
Yeah. But it sounds like, there's a lot of people in your life that do know.
Yeah.
And,
I think what we also do is that we trust that when we have to have the conversation, we can have a good, healthy conversation. Because the bottom line is that our hope is that the kids see that we have a healthy relationship. That doesn't make up our relationship, right? The non-monogamy. It's we're together, we're healthy, we communicate, we treat each other well, we don't argue, we don't have these drawn up fights or anything like that. And I think that provides a different basis for the kids too, right? Because that's not what they saw before. So
yeah,
so that's why it doesn't really worry us per se. It's just we're not proactively working on a plan to come up with them. So,
yeah. Well, it sounds like what you two have done is built a foundation that you can pretty much build anything on top of, right? If it's a hard conversation with a child, one of your kids, it's a hard conversation with each other. It's taking off for a couple months for a job. It's trying out a new relationship. You've built a container that you say, we can try something hard or we can do something hard. We trust the system to support it. We trust each other to support it.
For sure. And it's it's actually a very comforting thing, right? Because it's kind of what you work for. I didn't really realize that's what I was working towards, in a relationship, and what felt like I was missing. Right?
No, I don't think either of us did.
Nah. And then once we sort of felt that safety and security and ability to get through things, it's like, oh, okay, this is what it's really about, actually. This is really why we really feel confident to go into new things together, as well as enjoy our relationship and where we're at. And I mean, we had experience too, right? Of going through 2 divorces and learning what wasn't working.
All monogamous.
Yeah, all monogamous too. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's like, that's not working for me.
Yeah.
Let's try something else.
Yeah. And I also thank you for everything that you've shared. And there's just been, so many pieces we could keep talking about. But I was curious, I know at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned the importance of Burning Man for the two of you.
Yep.
And I wanted to bring us back to that and give you an opportunity to kind of touch on that and what that has meant in your life.
We've been to 3 burns now. We are at a point now where we help with certain parts of organization with a theme camp, which happens to be a nudist camp. It's been our 2nd year with them this year. A nudist camp mostly made up of the queer community. George is probably one of the straightest people in the camp.
Maybe number 2.
Maybe number 2.
Yeah.
But it's been a great experience. Of helping just to like organize and lead that. And we've just found like when you're hanging out with other people who, it seems like anyone who goes to Burning Man is somewhere off of a traditional path. They're seeking, if they are on a traditional path, they're seeking for something else than what the world has told them that they are designed to be on. And so just meeting those people and having those connections and conversations and experiences, just you feel like you have a little more faith in humanity, in the world, of being able to be around a community of people that will pull together for X amount of days to make things happen out of the goodness of their being. And coming home is always,
it's always pretty rough.
and it's like, and this year's burn with the rain, and it was fantastic. Fantastic. But you come home and everyone's like, oh, wasn't it chaos? And I'm like, no. Being here is chaos. Like coming back to kids and work and what's going on here, like that is chaos. I'm like, put me back in the mud.
Yeah.
So
I take it that you have not gone to Burning Man, correct?
We have not.
Do you have any interest in going to Burning Man?
Maybe someday, yes. We haven't had the capacity, I guess, until up until this point.
Well, especially because you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, right? There's so many people, especially in the community, who go for.
Oh yeah, there's so many people. Yeah.
Which is,
I think we're the only people in the Bay Area who haven't been as of this year.
Yeah, maybe Mark Miller. Yeah. But so, I mean, what was your impression from this year? Like, a lot of stuff happened. I know it was a couple months ago, but there was stuff in the news, right, about the rains and all that kind of thing. But because you also know so many other people who go, what's your sort of thoughts about it? Like, you guys want to go? And if you can't, I know it's a capacity thing, but is there other things that are holding you back?
For me, I'll just say, well, first off, for this year, the news made it sound like that the rains were a really huge deal. And we've heard and people I've talked to and things that like they just hunkered down and it was still a beautiful time together. Right. And they all really enjoyed it. For me, I think I would love to experience it sometime. I have to be mentally in the place to go do that. And I think that just with everything else in my life, it hasn't gotten there yet. But how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for reflecting on this year's, I read a lot of the news stories, and I think it's one of those where it's hard to know how much of it's sensationalized, how much of it is, because you can take a picture from any angle and make it look a whole lot of different ways. And you have probably a lot of influencers and people on social media who they get a lot more views if they're really struggling out there on the playa, right? And so to know, I think probably also various people had various experiences. And so I think there's also that. So we've heard some people who are like, yeah, it was hell. It was so hard. And we've heard people who are like, it was amazing. Everybody banded together and had a great time. And it really showed us what was possible. And so I think probably much like most things, it's individual experiences are vastly different.
For sure.
And every year is hard for a different reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like next year.
If it's not the rain, it's the heat.
Else that makes it hard for everyone.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think for me,
individually or collectively.
Yeah. For me, my interest is, I think, as somebody who wants to experience everything in life.
Yeah.
I would love to experience it at least once. I know the way I do things, I would probably experience it once, be like, this is where I belong. I'd probably do it 3 or 4 times, completely all out. And then I would be like, and I now need something new to experience. So I would love to do it. It's a matter of for me, really figuring out how to be smart about when is the right time to be in certain places.
Yeah. It does take a lot. A lot of it is preparation, but that's a lot of fun too, though. Like, because you really are looking at 9 days or more, because it does, for us anyway, it takes a full day to get there and through the gate and then onto the site, because we have to drive from Southern California. And then we pick up a friend who comes in with us from San Francisco and do that all the coordination, getting through the checkpoint and then finally getting in. And it's 24 hours just to get in, right? And it's not to scare anybody away. It's just a very tedious process, and it's a long way to drive, right? But the preparation you do though is you have to look at this from that you're going to be gone from, at least for us, Saturday all the way till the following week's Monday, right? So that's food, that's clothing, that's kind of mentally like you really have to look at it that way. And so for this year when it rained, people have that were prepared for, and not to say that it was going to rain, but just they know it's going to be 10 days, 12 days. And if they're out there for an extra 2 days, it's not a big deal. Right. And it was just having the patience to wait out the rain, let the roads dry out, and it all dried out within a day too. So, as bad as it looked, it actually ended up being some of the best days out there because traditionally it's really hot, right? Could be in the hundreds with dust storms every day.
Or during the day, I can stay out in the sun for like an hour. I was able to walk around for like 6 hours during the day and just like see art and just do so much more because it wasn't 100 degrees.
Yeah. So the big difference between last year's burn and then this year's 2023 was definitely the weather. It was horrible dust storms for a couple of days straight. And that changes the attitude of a lot of people. It was really hard on a lot of people last year because of that. It was also the first burn after COVID, right? So there's a lot of pent up energy. There was 3 calendar years between the end of the prior Burning Man to the new one. So there was even a larger influx of influencers too, right? So it was this different sort of mix of people who were experiencing Burning Man for the first time, and also people coming in with this different energy to it too. So last year it was a tough burn for a lot of ways. It wasn't just the weather. It was because of the mix of people was different, I think, than in traditional burns. This year it was a lot more low key. They actually had less people. They had almost 10,000 less people.
It was nice.
Yeah. It didn't seem as frantic. It wasn't as hyper, but the one thing that's, it still amazes us is the level of like commitment to the art that's there and the depth of the art and what, people bring to out there and that they plan the whole entire year to bring just pieces of art, to share with everybody. And that sort of sense of community we haven't found it anywhere else. And that's what keeps us going back every year. Is what people are willing to give personally to the event. And the people who do that also are people who, are just very in generally mindful. And that then plays into the sense of people who are just much more open-minded about things too, right? And welcoming and non-judgmental. And so you end up with a temporary city of 80,000 people who are all non-judgmental, accepting, loving, and sharing their art and their gifts with everybody. And I love to climb it. Yeah. He loves to climb the art. So the pieces there are huge for people who don't know. It's the art, is usually secure enough for people to climb on. There's no warning signs. Safety third. Yeah. There's an expression, safety third, not safety first. So for us, it's, parlay that community with us evolving into more of an autonomous and poly life. All these components have really sort of landed us into a place that we really enjoy the community, right? It feels like home to us. And there is an expression in Burning Man, like when you meet people, everybody says, welcome home. That's what they say when you get out there. And it's true. You have a sense of comfort and safety and acceptance that is really hard to match outside of Burning Man. So I think we're going to be going for a while, we'll see how it goes, but
it's the plan, life always goes to plan.
Yeah.
So far it has.
So far.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. One of the fun things about our Burning Man camp, it's a nudist camp, primarily gay men, but we have a theme, and it's naked oil wrestling. So yeah, it's 3 days a week. 3 days a week. We roll out the wrestling mat and people oil up and they wrestle.
It is competitive.
It is, yeah. But it's an expression of freedom too, as well, right? Where you have no labels, you have no. One of the key tenets of Burning Man is it's called decommodification, meaning that you don't wear labels, you don't wear things that identify. You don't identify with your clothing, right? And nudism is the exact same tenet, where when you meet people for the first time and you're completely naked, there isn't, you don't have the same instant judgments that we kind of naturally do, or biases that you have as much, right? And meeting people for the first time that way is, it's such a more refreshing way and genuine way to meet people, right? Because it's not about what you do for a living. It's not about how much money you have. It's not even about where you live, right? It's about who you are as a person. And the fact that you have the courage to do that and to meet people in that setting really gives us a better, I don't know, it's a different social life, when we have, those are the people, that's how we meet people for the first time. And so the camp itself really exemplifies a lot of that too, where it's welcoming. And this year, we had so many people just come in from the street, just who want to wrestle. It wasn't even our own camp that was doing the wrestling. It was other people who just came in. They're just stripping off their clothes and oiling up and going at it. And it was great.
Jumping in.
The crowd were great. It was
A lot more women wrestled this year
too. Yeah. We have in the past too. So
cool.
Yeah. If there's any sort of peek into Burning Man and sure, there's a lot of things that go on all night, right? There's wild parties. There's every other camp.
There's things I'm sure I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can imagine that. But that's the part that we just love, is that there's such a variety and acceptance of different ideas and different things. And, you can find a bar, you can find a place to drink, and
or you can find an orgy.
Yeah. If you want to find an orgy.
Yep.
Yeah. So
what kind of town? Well, I love so much of this is like the thread this whole time has been your autonomy. And I think one of the observations I've had is that the ability to build community around yourselves, your community, because you've done a lot of this through Instagram over the years, and we'll link to your account as well, because you post a lot of your travels and how you interact there. And that was sort of how we got connected a few years back, but that you've had community, which has allowed you each to, it seems to me it's allowed you each to be more autonomous, because you have more confidence in yourselves that, first of all, that you're there for each other, but perhaps if you're not, or if there is a gap, that you have community to catch you, right? That you're not just alone on an island, and it's everything rides on each other. It's, you definitely play a big role in each other's lives, but you have so much more that is outside of that as well.
It is. And we're lucky that we live in an area where there are local meetups and groups and a larger community than, say, I grew up in Indiana. So where that would probably be a very more difficult place to probably find some community. I could be wrong, but people that I went to high school with have never even heard the word polyamorous. So I'm guessing the community would be a lot harder for me to find if I still lived somewhere there versus, living in California.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. As always, I know we could talk for hours, but I guess we want to be respectful of your time as well. Is there anything else that you two want to get out there?
And knowing that you will be back.
Yeah, of course.
We have to do a part 3 at some point.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, one thing that's kind of interesting, I'll talk about like dating apps. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but so one of the things that Sarah's tried to do is actually date other women too, right? And she's said it's been
not as successful.
Yeah, it's oddly interesting that it's a challenge for somebody who's bi, female, to date other women, or
at least for me. Plus, I'm awkward with women. I don't know how to flirt with them as well as I do like men. So
yeah,
we're hard. Women are hard to date.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Agreed.
So this was actually a plug. Any women who want to date Sarah, you have an Instagram handle. Reach out to her. Yeah, I'm her best wingman.
He is. He's a great wingman.
Yeah.
My wingman skills are not quite as up to par.
Yeah.
That's actually weird. That's my ulterior motive. Yeah, I'm trying to get her to wingman me a little more.
Yeah. Hey, we all have room to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to your point, like dating apps can be really, really difficult and have their own challenges. They can be really good and amazing in some ways, and also incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, it was so funny. So on that trip that she came out to the Middle East earlier this year, you turned on what you turned on.
I'll go on Bumble just to peek around and see. I'm in the Middle East. I'm very popular. But whenever we're out in another country, I just open up Bumble. I'm like, what's out here? Like, in Croatia, man. Whew, nice choices in that part of it. I'm like, I didn't have time to date anyone, but I like to just see what's available.
Like me, like trying to no matches. I'm like, oh, all right. delete that app again. I should just accept that dating apps aren't for me. And I guess I hold out hope, but I don't know.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the autonomy is what works for one doesn't have to work for the other. Mm-hmm. And I know that's been a journey for us of always feeling like if I'm doing it, you have to do it. If you're doing it, I have to do it. Why is what you're doing not working for me? And it's like, we're two very different people with two, like, yes, we are married and yes, we have a lot of similarities, but we're also very different. And so to think that the ways I do things and the way Emma does things are going to work for each other, I think we're finally figuring out that might not be the case.
As much as we want to have quality and the best and our partner going through the same goodness that we get to go through at the same time. It's like the intention of that is always there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is, a little more difficult to navigate when it's not.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, yeah, because for you, Sarah, it's like, well, just fire up Bumble and it's going to be amazing. You'll have a great evening just like I did. And it's like, I don't think I will have the same experiences you did. Like, yeah.
Nope. Definitely not.
So,
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful we got to do this again, and I look forward to the next time.
Yes.
And just thank you both for, always being positive. Like, it's such a positive approach and positive conversation with you two, as always. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And I'm definitely excited for the next time too.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
And we're back. Thank you, Sarah and George, for everything that you shared today and for, again, coming back on the podcast. We had a lovely time catching back up and can't wait till next time.
Also, just thanks for being awesome.
Yeah.
I think this is, I keep gushing about it, but I think this is a beautiful conversation, and the threads of autonomy within non-monogamy while maintaining and building a close connection with a partner are, I think often people see autonomy and connection as mutually exclusive. And I love that this is an example of how they are definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A quick reminder, you can go and follow Sarah and George on Instagram. Find links in the podcast show notes to do so.
Yeah. And I don't think we have a whole lot else to tell you other than there's a virtual meet and greet coming up in the end of January on January 26th. So mark your calendars.
Mark your calendars now.
Yeah, clear that date.
Yeah.
Clear that whole week just to prepare.
Just to prepare for that Friday night.
That's right. And again, we'll be in Atlanta from January 12th to the 14th with our community partying it up. We would love to have you join us. There's still time to do that. If you jump onto our website and click on the community tab, you can find out how to join the community and get all of the information there.
And with that, next week, we have an interview with Evita. It's another part 2 episode. She came on back in episode 229. Go and listen to that one in preparation for next week. Otherwise, we will see you then.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll see everybody in a week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.